Luck is one of those words people use with surprising certainty, yet very few ever stop to examine what it truly means. When someone succeeds, observers often shrug and say, they were lucky. When someone fails, the explanation quietly shifts toward bad timing, unfortunate circumstances, or simply bad luck. The word becomes a convenient label for events we do not fully understand. Yet if you watch carefully enough, if you observe how lives actually unfold rather than how they appear from a distance, you begin to notice something curious about the people who seem lucky over and over again. Their lives do not look random. Patterns begin to appear. Most people imagine luck as something external, something unpredictable that arrives from outside their control. A chance encounter, a fortunate coincidence, a sudden opportunity appearing from nowhere. From this perspective, luck behaves like weather. It happens to you. Some people stand in sunshine. Others find themselves in storms. But this explanation leaves an uncomfortable question unanswered. Why do certain individuals seem to encounter opportunity repeatedly, while others move through years of effort without ever experiencing what people call a lucky break? Take a moment to consider the stories we often hear about successful individuals. An entrepreneur launches a company that grows beyond expectation. An artist suddenly gains recognition after years of obscurity. An actor appears in a film that changes everything. From the outside, these moments look like lightning strikes. A person stands in exactly the right place at exactly the right time, and the door opens. To the casual observer, it looks magical, almost accidental, as if fortune simply decided to favor that person on that particular day. Yet when the story is examined more closely, the illusion of randomness begins to dissolve. That actor who appeared overnight in a breakthrough role rarely arrived there by chance. Years often preceded that moment. Years spent in rehearsal rooms, auditions, small performances in places few people noticed. Years spent studying craft, refining skills, learning how to endure rejection after rejection without abandoning the path entirely. The opportunity that appeared on one particular afternoon may indeed have been unexpected, but the ability to recognize it, accept it, and perform well enough to transform it into success had been quietly built long before the moment arrived. In other words, what people often call luck may actually be the visible result of invisible preparation. Preparation alone, of course, does not guarantee success. The world contains many capable people whose talents remain unnoticed for long stretches of time. Effort does not function like a vending machine where you insert persistence and receive success in return. But preparation does something subtle and powerful. It changes the probability of what becomes possible. It positions a person in places where opportunity can appear. It sharpens awareness so that when something unusual enters the room, it does not pass unnoticed. Think about how many opportunities in life arrive disguised as ordinary situations. A conversation with a stranger, an unexpected invitation, a project that initially seems small but quietly expands into something larger. These moments rarely announce themselves as life-changing events. They look ordinary at first glance. Many people walk past them without realizing what they are seeing. Yet, the individual who has been working, learning, and developing themselves is far more likely to recognize the potential hidden inside those moments. There is another element that quietly shapes luck, one that receives far less attention than effort or preparation. It has to do with perception. The way a person interprets the events unfolding around them influences which possibilities they notice and which they ignore. Two people can stand in the same environment and see completely different worlds. One sees obstacles everywhere and proceeds cautiously, protecting themselves from disappointment. The other sees possibilities, small openings in the structure of circumstances that could lead somewhere interesting. The difference between these perspectives may appear subtle, yet over time it changes the direction of an entire life. A positive mindset does not magically create success out of thin air, but it does something equally important. It expands attention. When the mind expects opportunity, it begins scanning the environment differently. It listens more carefully during conversations. It notices connections between ideas. It becomes curious about unfamiliar paths instead of dismissing them immediately. In this way, expectation quietly shapes experience. What we anticipate influences what we perceive, and what we perceive determines which opportunities we pursue. Meanwhile, individuals who assume that fortune never favors them often behave in ways that reinforce that belief. They hesitate when opportunities appear uncertain. They decline invitations that require risk. They wait until circumstances feel perfectly safe before taking action. Unfortunately, life rarely presents perfectly safe opportunities. The door that leads somewhere meaningful usually carries at least a small degree of uncertainty. By avoiding uncertainty altogether, many people unintentionally avoid the very situations where good fortune tends to emerge. Luck, then, begins to look less like a mysterious force and more like a dynamic interaction between preparation, perception, and behavior. Preparation develops competence. Perception reveals opportunity. Behavior determines whether the opportunity is accepted or ignored. When these three elements align, something interesting happens. Events that might appear random from the outside start to form a pattern. Over time, the pattern becomes noticeable to others. Friends, colleagues, and observers begin commenting on how fortunate someone seems to be. They notice the visible results but rarely see the quieter forces working underneath the surface. They do not see the hours of effort invested long before recognition arrived. They do not see the mindset that allowed opportunity to be recognized when it appeared. They only see the moment when preparation and chance intersected. And that intersection is what most people call luck. What makes this realization important is not merely understanding it intellectually. The deeper implication is that luck may be far less mysterious than it appears. If preparation increases awareness, and awareness increases the likelihood of recognizing opportunity, then luck becomes something that can gradually be cultivated rather than passively awaited. It grows in environments where curiosity is active, where effort is sustained, and where individuals remain open to possibilities that others might overlook. This does not remove uncertainty from life. Chance will always play some role in how events unfold. Yet once you begin observing the patterns carefully, luck stops looking like a random gift reserved for a fortunate few. It begins to resemble a process unfolding quietly in the background of everyday decisions. Small actions accumulating over time. Subtle shifts in perception guiding a person toward places where opportunity is more likely to appear. And somewhere within that quiet process, the meaning of luck begins to change. When people talk about success stories, the part they remember most is usually the moment everything changes. The day the company suddenly becomes profitable, the moment the artist's work finally gains recognition, the interview that leads to a life-changing opportunity. From the outside, these moments look dramatic, almost cinematic, as if life suddenly decided to favor someone after years of uncertainty. Yet what rarely receives attention is the long stretch of time before that turning point. The quiet years where nothing appears extraordinary at all. If you observe closely enough, many stories that appear to be driven by luck are actually supported by something much less glamorous, preparation that continues even when there is no guarantee it will ever pay off. It is the period where effort accumulates quietly without applause, where persistence operates without immediate reward, and where individuals keep developing themselves long before anyone notices their progress. These invisible seasons are rarely mentioned when people summarize success in a single sentence. Yet they form the structure that makes so-called lucky outcomes possible. Consider how skills develop in any field. Whether someone wants to become a musician, an athlete, an entrepreneur, or a performer, there is a phase that feels repetitive and often discouraging. Practice sessions that seem uneventful, attempts that lead nowhere, rejections that arrive without explanation. To an outside observer, it may look as though nothing meaningful is happening. Yet beneath the surface, something very real is taking shape. Experience is accumulating. Judgment is sharpening. Small adjustments are improving performance in ways that are almost impossible to detect in a single moment, but become undeniable over time. Persistence has a peculiar quality that makes it difficult to appreciate while it is happening. Progress rarely moves in a straight line. Instead, it advances through long plateaus where visible improvement appears minimal. During these stretches, many people begin questioning whether their efforts are worthwhile. Doubt slowly enters the conversation, and the temptation to abandon the path becomes stronger. The individuals who continue moving forward during these periods often look ordinary from the outside. Yet they are quietly building something powerful: endurance. Endurance changes how a person interacts with opportunity. Someone who has spent years refining their craft is not just waiting for a break. They are becoming capable of handling one when it appears. When a sudden chance arises, they already possess the competence required to step into that moment confidently. Without preparation, opportunity can pass by unnoticed or slip away because the individual simply is not ready. With preparation, however, the same opportunity transforms into something entirely different. There is another layer hidden within persistence that people often overlook. Each attempt, each effort, each interaction expands the network of possibilities surrounding a person. Skills improve, certainly, but connections also begin forming in subtle ways. Someone remembers a conversation. A colleague recalls a previous collaboration. A mentor notices dedication that stands out from the crowd. These relationships rarely produce immediate results, yet they quietly shape the environment in which opportunities later emerge. This is one reason persistence often appears indistinguishable from luck when viewed from a distance. The person who has been present consistently in their field gradually becomes familiar to others. They attend events, participate in discussions, contribute ideas, and demonstrate commitment through repeated action. Over time, people begin associating that individual with reliability and capability. When an unexpected opportunity appears, the mind naturally searches for someone who might be able to handle it. The name that surfaces often belongs to the person who has been showing up long before the opportunity existed. Another element working beneath the surface is the willingness to embrace risk. Preparation alone can build skill, but skill does not automatically lead to opportunity unless it is placed in situations where it can be tested. Many moments that lead to breakthroughs begin with uncertainty, accepting a project without knowing exactly how it will unfold, reaching out to someone more experienced, sharing an idea that may or may not succeed. These decisions require a degree of courage because they expose the possibility of failure. Yet they also create pathways where new outcomes become possible. Risk and preparation form an interesting partnership. Risk without preparation can lead to unnecessary setbacks. Preparation without risk can lead to stagnation. When both operate together, however, the balance becomes powerful. Preparation provides the competence necessary to act effectively, while risk creates the situations where that competence can actually be expressed. It is within these intersections that many people eventually encounter what others describe as lucky breaks. The psychological dimension of persistence is equally significant. Individuals who remain committed to their development gradually build a relationship with effort itself. Instead of viewing work as a burden that must produce immediate results, they begin seeing it as part of a larger process. This shift changes how setbacks are interpreted. Failures stop appearing as final verdicts and begin functioning as information. Each mistake reveals something useful. Each rejection becomes a form of feedback. Over time, this mindset reduces the fear associated with trying again, and something interesting begins to happen when fear loses its grip. A person becomes more willing to explore possibilities that previously felt intimidating. They initiate conversations that once seemed uncomfortable. They experiment with new ideas without waiting for perfect conditions. These actions increase exposure to unfamiliar environments, and unfamiliar environments often contain opportunities that cannot be predicted in advance. At this point, the structure behind so-called lucky success becomes easier to see. Preparation builds competence. Persistence strengthens resilience. Repeated action expands networks and visibility. Risk introduces individuals to situations where unexpected outcomes can occur. None of these elements guarantees immediate results, yet together they create an environment where opportunities become far more likely to appear. From the outside, observers may only notice the moment when everything finally connects. They see the promotion, the breakthrough project, the recognition that suddenly elevates someone into a new position. Without knowledge of the years preceding that moment, the outcome can easily look accidental. It resembles a fortunate coincidence, a stroke of luck that arrived without warning. Yet for the person living inside that story, the moment feels very different. It feels like a natural continuation of the path they have been walking all along. In reality, luck rarely arrives as a completely isolated event. More often, it emerges from a foundation built slowly over time, a structure supported by preparation and strengthened by persistence. Each effort contributes a small piece to that structure, even when the immediate results remain invisible. Eventually, the accumulation reaches a point where the right moment intersects with the right readiness. And when that intersection finally appears, What the world calls luck often reveals itself as something much more deliberate than it first seemed. Step into a crowded space where conversations overlap. Ideas travel quietly between strangers, and small possibilities drift through the air almost unnoticed. In that same environment, two people may leave with completely different stories about what happened. One walks away convinced the evening was ordinary, uneventful, almost forgettable. The other leaves feeling as if something meaningful has begun to unfold. Nothing in the room changed. The difference lies in the way each person perceived what was happening around them. Long before opportunity becomes visible as success, it first appears as perception. The human mind is not a passive recorder of reality. It is an active interpreter. It selects certain signals, ignores others, and quietly constructs a version of the world based on what it expects to find. In daily life, this process happens automatically. So automatically that most people rarely question it. Yet this invisible mechanism has a profound influence on how luck appears to operate. What someone notices determines what they act upon, and what they act upon determines which possibilities begin to grow. Many people imagine opportunities as dramatic events, something obvious and unmistakable. In reality, they rarely look that way at the beginning. Opportunities tend to arrive disguised as ordinary situations, a conversation that seems casual at first, a suggestion mentioned in passing, an introduction between two people who have never met before. These moments rarely announce their importance. They require a particular kind of awareness to recognize their potential, and that awareness is deeply connected to mindset. A person who expects life to contain possibilities moves through the world with a different kind of attention. Curiosity becomes part of how they observe everyday events. They listen more closely when others speak. They remain open to exploring unfamiliar directions rather than immediately dismissing them as unrealistic or inconvenient. This openness creates an expanded field of perception where subtle chances can become visible. Meanwhile, someone who expects disappointment often filters experience in the opposite direction. Their attention naturally gravitates toward obstacles and reasons why something might not work. This perspective can feel safe because it protects against unrealistic expectations, but it also narrows awareness. Possibilities that require a small amount of uncertainty may never receive a second glance. In this way, the belief that opportunities rarely appear quietly reinforces itself. Psychologists sometimes describe this dynamic as expectation shaping perception. When the mind anticipates something positive, it becomes more alert to evidence that confirms that belief. The same mechanism occurs when someone expects difficulty. Their awareness begins scanning for signals that justify caution. Over time, these mental patterns influence not only how a person interprets events, but also how they behave within them. Positive expectation carries an interesting effect that often goes unnoticed. It subtly changes how individuals engage with the people around them. Someone who believes meaningful opportunities are possible tends to communicate with more energy and interest. Their voice carries a sense of engagement. Their body language expresses openness. These signals influence the responses they receive from others, creating interactions that feel more welcoming and collaborative. Human beings are highly responsive to emotional cues. A person who radiates enthusiasm often attracts attention without trying. Conversations with them tend to flow more easily because their presence signals curiosity and confidence rather than hesitation. In environments where ideas and connections matter, these qualities quietly shape how others perceive them. Invitations emerge more naturally. Suggestions are offered more freely. Relationships develop with less friction. Optimism, in this sense, operates less like wishful thinking and more like a form of mental positioning. It does not require ignoring problems or pretending every situation will lead to success. Instead, it keeps awareness oriented toward potential while acknowledging uncertainty. This balance allows individuals to remain realistic without becoming discouraged by temporary setbacks. Resilience grows naturally within this perspective. When someone expects that meaningful outcomes remain possible, a failed attempt does not automatically feel like a permanent barrier. It becomes information rather than defeat. Each experience contributes something useful, even if the immediate result falls short of expectations. This attitude encourages continued exploration, and continued exploration increases the number of situations where unexpected opportunities can appear. Many of the turning points people later describe as luck begin in this space between attention and expectation. A brief exchange of ideas leads to collaboration. A curiosity about a new skill introduces someone to a completely different path. A willingness to speak with a stranger reveals a connection that would have remained invisible otherwise. None of these moments look remarkable while they are happening. Their significance only becomes clear when viewed in hindsight. What appears from the outside as fortunate coincidence often begins with something simpler: the habit of paying attention. Awareness transforms everyday environments into landscapes where possibility can be discovered rather than overlooked. When this awareness is combined with a mindset that expects life to contain meaningful openings, opportunities begin appearing in places that once seemed ordinary. Of course, mindset alone cannot create success. Effort, preparation, and action remain essential parts of the process. Yet mindset determines whether those efforts connect with the right situations. It influences where attention travels and how individuals respond when something unexpected enters their path. Over time, the relationship between mindset and experience becomes visible in subtle ways. Individuals who maintain a receptive outlook often describe their lives as filled with interesting coincidences, helpful encounters, and surprising chances to grow. Observers might label these events as luck. From the inside, however, the experience feels less mysterious. It resembles a pattern formed by attention, expectation, and the willingness to explore what others might ignore. In that sense, luck begins long before the moment people celebrate. It begins in the quiet direction of the mind. Most people believe that their life is shaped mainly by what happens around them: circumstances, timing, the economy, other people's decisions. And countless external forces seem to dictate what becomes possible and what remains out of reach. From that perspective, success appears unpredictable and luck seems almost mystical. Yet beneath the surface of daily events there exists another force that quietly organizes how a person experiences the world, the story they tell themselves about who they are. Every individual carries an internal narrative, a constant stream of interpretation running silently through the mind. It explains why certain things happen, what those events mean, and what should be expected next. Over time, that story becomes so familiar that it feels like truth rather than interpretation. Someone might tell themselves they are unlucky, overlooked, or destined to struggle. Another person may carry a very different narrative, one where challenges are temporary and opportunities remain possible. These internal stories do not simply describe reality, they shape the lens through which reality is experienced. The idea behind Think Up begins with recognizing that this inner narrative can be rewritten. The phrase itself suggests a deliberate shift upward, a conscious decision to elevate how one thinks, how one holds the body, and how one approaches life. Instead of accepting the inherited assumptions that quietly limit action, the individual learns to construct a more empowering internal environment. This transformation does not begin with dramatic external changes. It starts in subtle adjustments within the body, the mind, and the spirit. The body plays a surprisingly powerful role in shaping thought. Consider how posture influences emotion. When someone stands with their shoulders collapsed and their gaze lowered, their breathing becomes shallow and their energy diminishes. The body communicates a message to the brain that something is wrong or uncertain. Over time, that physical posture reinforces feelings of doubt or hesitation. In contrast, when the body straightens, when the chest lifts and breathing deepens, the nervous system begins responding differently. Oxygen flows more freely, attention sharpens, and a quiet sense of strength begins to emerge. This connection between posture and psychology may appear simple, yet it reveals an important principle: the body and mind constantly influence one another. By intentionally adopting a posture of confidence, a person can begin altering the emotional tone of their thoughts. It is not about pretending to be someone else. It is about allowing the body to support a state of awareness that invites clarity rather than contraction. Over time, these physical adjustments become habits, and those habits gradually reshape how someone carries themselves through daily life. Once the body shifts, the mind becomes more receptive to new patterns of thinking. This is where the deeper work of Think Up takes place. The mind is incredibly responsive to repeated ideas. Whatever thoughts are rehearsed frequently begin forming the beliefs that guide behavior. Many people unknowingly repeat limiting statements inside their own minds. They assume they are average, unremarkable, or destined to remain where they are. These quiet assumptions become invisible boundaries that restrict what they attempt. Rewriting the inner story means questioning those assumptions. It means recognizing that many beliefs were formed through past experiences rather than deliberate choice. A setback from years ago may still influence how someone evaluates their own abilities. A criticism from a teacher or colleague may echo long after the original moment has passed. By bringing awareness to these inherited narratives, a person gains the ability to choose a different interpretation. Choosing a new interpretation does not require denying past experiences. Instead, it involves reframing them in ways that support growth. A failure becomes information rather than proof of inadequacy. A delay becomes preparation rather than rejection. Through this shift, the mind begins constructing a narrative where progress remains possible. Even when circumstances appear uncertain, language plays a powerful role in this process. The words people use when thinking about themselves subtly guide their expectations. When someone repeatedly describes themselves as capable, determined, or resilient, those descriptions gradually influence how they respond to challenges. The mind begins searching for evidence that supports these statements, reinforcing the belief that progress is achievable. Over time, this internal dialogue becomes a source of encouragement rather than limitation. The spiritual dimension of Think Up expands this transformation even further. Spirit in this context does not necessarily refer to a specific religious framework. It represents the deeper sense of purpose that connects an individual to something larger than immediate circumstances. When people operate only from short-term reactions, their motivation can fluctuate depending on external conditions. When they connect with a broader sense of meaning, their actions begin aligning with values that endure beyond temporary setbacks. This alignment produces a quiet form of confidence. Instead of chasing validation from every situation, the individual develops trust in their direction. They recognize that their worth does not depend entirely on the outcome of a single attempt. This perspective allows them to act with greater freedom. Because the fear of failure loses some of its power, effort becomes an expression of purpose rather than a desperate attempt to prove something. As body, mind, and spirit gradually align, a subtle transformation takes place in how a person interacts with life. Their presence changes. They walk differently, speak differently, and approach opportunities with a level of assurance that was not visible before. Others begin noticing this shift even when they cannot explain exactly what has changed. The individual appears more composed, more attentive, more capable of navigating uncertain situations. This transformation is rarely sudden. It develops through consistent practice, through moments where a person chooses a more empowering posture, a more constructive thought, or a more purposeful perspective. Each small adjustment contributes to the gradual rewriting of the inner narrative. Over time, the new story becomes familiar, just as the old one once did. When the internal story evolves, external experiences often follow in unexpected ways. People respond differently to someone who carries themselves with clarity and confidence. Opportunities that once seemed distant become easier to approach. Conversations feel more natural because the individual no longer doubts their own presence in the room. What others describe as confidence is often the visible expression of a narrative that has been consciously rewritten. At its core, Think Up is an invitation to recognize that identity is not fixed. The way someone sees themselves today does not have to remain permanent. Through deliberate attention to posture, thought, and purpose, a person can begin shaping the internal environment that influences every decision they make. The process may begin quietly, but its effects ripple outward into every area of life. A different story, once practiced long enough, begins to feel natural. Many people move through life with a vague desire for success, happiness, or recognition, yet those words often remain abstract ideas rather than clear destinations. When someone says they want to succeed, what exactly does that mean? Does it mean building a meaningful career, creating something valuable for others, developing financial freedom, or simply living with a sense of purpose and fulfillment? Without a clear definition, ambition begins to float in every direction at once. Energy is spent, effort is made, but the path forward remains blurry. In this state, even capable individuals can spend years working hard while feeling as though progress never quite arrives. Clarity of purpose changes this entire dynamic. The moment a person decides what they truly want to pursue, something interesting happens inside the mind. Attention sharpens. Priorities begin organizing themselves naturally. Decisions that once felt confusing become easier to evaluate. A person with a defined objective does not eliminate uncertainty from life, but they gain a compass that guides them through it. Each step forward may still involve mistakes or adjustments, yet the overall direction becomes easier to maintain. Imagine an archer preparing to release an arrow without a visible target. The act of shooting becomes meaningless. The arrow might travel through the air with impressive speed, but there is no way to know whether the shot succeeded or failed. The energy expended accomplishes very little because it lacks direction. Now picture the same archer standing before a clearly defined target. Every movement suddenly carries intention, the angle of the bow, the strength of the pull. The moment of release, each element aligns toward a specific point. The target provides feedback. If the arrow lands too far left, the archer adjusts. If it lands slightly low, the next attempt compensates. Progress becomes measurable because the goal is visible. The discipline of setting specific goals functions in a similar way. A clearly defined objective gives effort a place to land. Instead of scattering energy across countless possibilities, a person learns to focus attention on actions that move them closer to what they truly want. This focus does not restrict creativity. Rather, it channels it. When the mind knows what it is aiming toward, it begins discovering strategies that might otherwise remain hidden. Yet clarity alone is not enough. Even the most carefully defined goal requires another ingredient before it can become reality: the courage to show up. Showing up means participating in life rather than observing it from a distance. It means stepping into environments where your skills, ideas, and potential can be seen. Many people possess remarkable abilities but remain invisible because they hesitate to place themselves in situations where those abilities could be recognized. Fear often plays a quiet role in this hesitation. The fear of criticism, the fear of rejection, the fear of discovering that the path may be more difficult than expected. These concerns are understandable, yet they can also become barriers that prevent meaningful progress. Opportunities rarely arrive at the doorstep of someone who remains hidden. They tend to appear in spaces where people gather, collaborate, and exchange ideas. Showing up would always require dramatic action. Sometimes it begins with small steps: attending a meeting where new perspectives are shared, contributing to a discussion that expands understanding, volunteering for a project that stretches existing skills. Each of these moments increases visibility, and visibility invites interaction. When others become aware of your interests and abilities, the network of possibilities surrounding you begins to expand. There is another dimension to showing up that extends beyond physical presence. True participation involves engagement. Being present in a room while remaining mentally distant creates little impact. Engagement, on the other hand, signals curiosity and commitment. It demonstrates that you are not merely observing but actively contributing to the environment. People respond to this energy. They notice the individual who listens carefully, asks thoughtful questions, and participates with genuine interest. Over time, consistent engagement builds credibility. Credibility is a form of trust earned through repeated action. When others see that you appear regularly, contribute meaningfully, and remain reliable in your efforts, they begin associating you with dependability. This reputation develops gradually but carries significant influence. When opportunities arise, people often think first of individuals who have demonstrated commitment over time. Mistakes inevitably occur along this path. Attempting new challenges brings moments of uncertainty and occasional failure, yet these experiences contain valuable information. Each attempt reveals something about the environment, about the skills required, and about the adjustments needed for future success. Someone who is actively showing up gains access to this feedback loop. Instead of guessing what might work, they learn directly through experience. An interesting transformation happens when clarity and courage operate together. Goals provide direction, and showing up provides momentum. Together they create movement. Instead of waiting for the perfect moment to begin, a person becomes comfortable with learning through action. Progress emerges through a series of steps, some successful, some imperfect, all contributing to the larger journey. This approach also shifts how people perceive time. Without clear goals, years can pass without noticeable change. Effort feels scattered, and results appear unpredictable. With defined objectives and consistent presence, Time becomes an ally rather than an obstacle. Each day contributes a small amount of progress. Each interaction expands understanding. Gradually, the accumulation of these efforts produces results that once seemed distant. Observers may eventually describe this process as fortunate timing. They may notice the individual who suddenly receives recognition or opportunity and assume luck played the central role. What they rarely see is the pattern behind that moment, the clarity that guided effort, the courage that encouraged participation, and the discipline that sustained consistent action over long stretches of time. Showing up transforms potential into experience. It converts ideas into conversations and intentions into opportunities. When someone chooses to step into environments where their goals can interact with the world, the distance between ambition and reality begins to shrink. Progress may unfold slowly at first, yet each appearance strengthens the connection between purpose and possibility. Clarity points the direction. Courage provides the movement. The simple act of showing up begins turning both into something tangible. Spend enough time observing human interaction, and a quiet truth begins to reveal itself. People rarely remember every detail of a conversation, but they almost always remember how someone made them feel. A meeting may include dozens of ideas, yet what lingers afterward is often something simpler, the sense of being respected, valued, or dismissed. In the invisible economy of human relationships, emotional impressions travel much farther than information. This is where appreciation begins to show its unusual power. Many individuals focus intensely on developing skills, building knowledge, and pursuing personal goals. These pursuits are important, yet they represent only part of the environment in which success unfolds. The world does not operate solely through individual ability. It operates through connections between people. Every collaboration, every opportunity, every partnership emerges from relationships formed through everyday interaction. Within those interactions, respect functions like a kind of social gravity, quietly pulling individuals toward one another. Praise, when offered sincerely, becomes one of the most effective ways to create that gravity. Not the exaggerated flattery people sometimes use to gain favor, but genuine recognition of another person's effort, character, or contribution. When appreciation is expressed honestly, it communicates something fundamental. I see what you have done, and I value it. That simple message has a remarkable ability to transform the atmosphere of a conversation. Consider how rarely people receive thoughtful acknowledgement in ordinary life. Many individuals move through their daily responsibilities without hearing that their work matters. A colleague may solve a difficult problem. A friend may offer support during a challenging moment. A stranger may extend kindness in a small but meaningful way. These acts often pass without recognition because attention tends to focus on the next task rather than the people involved in accomplishing it. Yet when appreciation appears, even briefly, the effect can be surprisingly powerful. Recognition activates a deep human need to feel understood and valued. It encourages people to continue contributing their strengths. It reinforces positive behavior in ways that criticism rarely achieves. In this sense, praise is not merely a polite gesture. It is a force that strengthens cooperation and builds trust within relationships. Humility plays an important role in making appreciation authentic. When someone approaches others with the assumption that they already know everything worth knowing, admiration becomes difficult. Humility opens the door to curiosity. It allows a person to recognize that every individual carries experiences, insights, and talents that deserve acknowledgement. By approaching interactions with this mindset, appreciation begins to arise naturally rather than feeling forced. There is also a subtle psychological shift that occurs when people practice recognizing the strengths of others. Instead of constantly comparing themselves to those around them, they begin observing qualities that inspire learning. A colleague's creativity, a mentor's patience, to a friend's resilience. These traits become sources of motivation rather than competition. Through this lens, praise becomes a form of shared growth. Appreciating the abilities of others does not diminish one's own potential. It expands awareness of what is possible. Of course, sincerity is essential. Humans are remarkably skilled at detecting insincere compliments. Flattery delivered only to gain approval often produces the opposite effect, creating suspicion rather than connection. Genuine appreciation emerges from careful observation. It notices specific details rather than offering vague praise. Instead of saying something automatically polite, it reflects an authentic response to what another person has contributed. The social influence of appreciation extends beyond individual relationships. In groups and communities, cultures of respect tend to produce stronger collaboration. When people feel their efforts are valued, they are more willing to share ideas, support one another, and take initiative. Creativity thrives in environments where recognition flows freely because individuals feel safe, contributing their perspectives without fear of dismissal. Contrast this with environments where appreciation is absent. Conversations become guarded, ideas remain unspoken, effort feels transactional rather than meaningful. Over time, the absence of acknowledgement quietly erodes motivation. The difference between these environments rarely lies in resources or intelligence. It lies in the emotional climate created by everyday interactions. Another interesting dimension of praise is its ability to elevate the person offering it. Someone who regularly acknowledges the achievements of others becomes associated with generosity of spirit. People feel comfortable around them because interactions carry encouragement rather than judgment. This reputation often leads others to reciprocate with support, advice, and collaboration. Opportunities that depend on goodwill naturally gravitate toward individuals who cultivate this atmosphere. Gratitude functions as a natural companion to praise. When someone expresses thanks for assistance, guidance, or simple acts of kindness, it reinforces the bonds between individuals. Gratitude communicates awareness that success rarely occurs in isolation. Every accomplishment carries contributions from teachers, colleagues, friends, and sometimes even strangers whose influence helped shape the outcome. Recognizing those contributions deepens relationships and strengthens mutual respect. Small gestures can carry remarkable meaning when they reflect genuine appreciation. A handwritten note acknowledging someone's effort, a brief message expressing gratitude for advice received, a thoughtful acknowledgement shared publicly with others. These actions require little time, yet they create moments that people remember long after the conversation ends. Appreciation also reminds individuals of an important perspective about success. Achievement does not emerge solely from personal ambition. It often develops through networks of encouragement, collaboration, and shared effort. By acknowledging the people who contribute along the way, a person remains connected to the broader community that makes progress possible. Over time, the practice of praise reshapes how someone experiences social interaction. Instead of approaching conversations with silent evaluation, they approach them with curiosity about what can be admired or learned. This shift transforms ordinary encounters into opportunities for connection. The act of noticing what is admirable in others becomes a habit, and that habit enriches every environment where it appears. Respect, humility, and appreciation form a quiet triangle of influence. Each reinforces the others, creating relationships where trust and goodwill flourish. In such environments, opportunities tend to arise naturally because people prefer working with those who recognize their value. Recognition offered sincerely rarely fades unnoticed. It leaves an impression that continues long after the moment has passed. There are moments in life when you meet someone for the first time and something about them immediately changes the atmosphere of the room. They may not say anything extraordinary. Their clothes may be ordinary, their introduction simple, yet their presence carries a certain warmth that people notice almost instantly. Conversations seem to flow more easily around them. Strangers relax in their presence without quite understanding why. Long before any words explain who they are, their energy has already spoken. Human beings are far more sensitive to emotional signals than they usually realize. Every expression, every tone of voice, every subtle gesture communicates information about how someone feels and how they see the world. This emotional language travels faster than logic. Before people analyze what is being said, they instinctively respond to how it is being expressed. In this quiet exchange of signals, attitude becomes visible. A cheerful spirit has a way of altering the social environment around it. When someone enters a conversation with genuine warmth and enthusiasm, the people nearby often mirror that energy without thinking about it. Smiles invite smiles. Laughter dissolves tension. Even in unfamiliar settings, a positive presence can soften the invisible barriers that usually separate strangers. It creates the sense that interaction is safe, natural, and welcome. This phenomenon is not accidental. Psychologists often describe emotions as contagious. The brain contains systems that instinctively mirror the emotional expressions of others. When someone nearby displays joy, curiosity, or excitement, those signals subtly influence the emotional state of the people observing them. This response evolved as part of human cooperation, allowing groups to synchronize behavior and react collectively to changing circumstances. In everyday life, it means that the mood one person carries can quietly spread through an entire room. Optimism plays an important role in shaping this emotional influence. An optimistic person does not necessarily believe that every situation will unfold perfectly. Instead, they approach life with a general expectation that something meaningful can emerge from the events they encounter. This expectation produces a certain lightness in their attitude. They remain open to possibility even when circumstances appear uncertain. People are naturally drawn to this orientation because it offers relief from the constant tension that pessimism can create. Someone who consistently anticipates problems tends to generate caution and distance in conversations. Their attention gravitates toward risks, and their tone often communicates hesitation. While caution has its place, an atmosphere dominated by negativity rarely inspires creativity or collaboration. In contrast, optimism signals readiness. It suggests that a person is willing to explore new ideas, attempt unfamiliar paths, and engage with the unknown without being paralyzed by fear. This quality attracts interest because it creates momentum. When others sense that someone approaches life with curiosity and positive expectation, they become more willing to share opportunities, ideas, and possibilities. A simple smile can serve as the gateway to this dynamic. Although it appears small, the act of smiling carries powerful psychological signals. It communicates friendliness, approachability, and confidence. In professional settings, it can transform the tone of an interview or meeting. In everyday interactions, it can invite conversation where silence might otherwise remain. Many unexpected connections begin with nothing more than a brief exchange of smiles between two strangers. This does not mean smiling should become an artificial performance. People quickly recognize forced positivity, and exaggerated cheerfulness can feel just as uncomfortable as persistent negativity. The power of a smile lies in its authenticity. When it reflects genuine interest or appreciation, it becomes an honest expression of openness. That authenticity is what invites others to respond. Humor often strengthens this effect. Shared laughter has an extraordinary ability to dissolve the invisible walls people carry into unfamiliar situations. A light-hearted comment can transform tension into comfort within seconds. It reminds everyone present that the moment does not have to be heavy or guarded. Through humor, people briefly step out of their worries and connect through a shared experience of amusement. Beyond social interactions, maintaining a cheerful outlook also influences how individuals respond to challenges. Difficult moments inevitably appear in every life. Projects fail, plans collapse, and unexpected obstacles disrupt carefully prepared strategies. A person who approaches these moments with optimism tends to search for solutions rather than remaining stuck in frustration. They treat problems as temporary puzzles rather than permanent barriers. This resilience quietly increases the likelihood of turning setbacks into new opportunities. When one path closes, the optimistic mind remains alert for alternatives. It continues experimenting, adjusting, and exploring possibilities that others might abandon too quickly. From the outside, this persistence sometimes looks like luck. Observers see someone recover from difficulty and later encounter success, assuming fortune simply favored them. In reality, optimism kept them moving long enough to discover another route. Another subtle benefit of cheerful energy lies in the impression it leaves on others. People remember those who bring lightness into difficult moments. A colleague who maintains humor during stressful projects becomes someone others enjoy working with. A friend who encourages hope during challenging times becomes someone others seek for guidance. Over time, these impressions shape reputations that travel through networks of relationships. Reputation often determines where opportunities flow. When people must choose collaborators, partners, or leaders, they naturally gravitate toward individuals who inspire confidence and positivity. The person known for their encouraging presence becomes someone others want around when new ventures begin. In this way, emotional energy becomes intertwined with professional and personal pathways. Of course, maintaining an optimistic outlook requires conscious effort. The world contains enough uncertainty to justify worry if someone focuses exclusively on what might go wrong. Choosing optimism does not mean ignoring reality. It means deciding where attention will rest. Instead of allowing fear to dominate perception, the mind searches for elements that support growth and possibility. Over time, this habit transforms everyday experience. Interactions feel lighter, relationships develop more easily, and unexpected connections begin appearing in places that once seemed ordinary. A cheerful presence acts like a signal, quietly inviting others into a shared atmosphere of openness. In many situations, the difference between an ordinary encounter and a meaningful connection begins with something remarkably simple: the emotional tone someone chooses to carry into the moment. In every field where excellence exists, there is a quiet lineage behind it. Musicians refine their craft through teachers who came before them. Entrepreneurs absorb lessons from mentors who once navigated uncertainty themselves. Writers study the rhythms and techniques of authors whose words have endured across generations. Progress rarely happens in isolation. Knowledge travels through people, through experience, through the willingness of one person to learn from another. Yet many individuals spend years trying to discover everything on their own, as if asking for guidance somehow diminishes their independence. Pride sometimes disguises itself as self-reliance, persuading people that true success must be achieved without assistance. The reality is quite different. The fastest paths of growth are usually built through learning from those who have already traveled further along the road. What appears to be a shortcut is actually a form of wisdom, recognizing that experience accumulated by others can illuminate the steps ahead. Reaching up means deliberately placing yourself within the orbit of people who understand more than you do in a particular domain. These individuals may be teachers, mentors, seasoned professionals, or even authors whose ideas shape your thinking through books and lectures. Their role is not to walk the journey for you, but to reveal patterns that would take years to discover alone. When someone shares insight drawn from their own struggles and experiments, they compress time for the person listening. This exchange requires humility. To learn effectively from experts, a person must accept that their current understanding is incomplete. That admission is not a weakness. It is the doorway through which growth becomes possible. Humility allows curiosity to replace defensiveness. Instead of protecting existing beliefs, the learner begins asking better questions. Why did this strategy succeed? What mistakes led to that outcome? How can similar principles be applied in a different context? Experts often appreciate this kind of curiosity. Contrary to popular myth, most accomplished individuals do not guard their knowledge as if it were a secret treasure. Many of them enjoy sharing what they have learned, especially with those who demonstrate genuine dedication. The key lies in approaching them with respect and intention. Rather than expecting immediate rewards, the learner shows patience, preparation, and appreciation for the opportunity to absorb guidance. Learning from others, however, represents only one part of the equation. Knowledge must eventually translate into practice, without deliberate action. Even the most insightful advice remains theoretical. Competence grows through repetition, experimentation, and adjustment. Each attempt reveals small details that cannot be fully explained through instruction alone. Intentional practice differs from simple repetition. Performing the same action repeatedly without reflection rarely produces improvement. True practice involves attention. It requires observing what works, identifying what does not, and adjusting techniques accordingly. A musician listens carefully to each note they play, refining subtle elements of timing and tone. A speaker evaluates how audiences respond to different approaches, learning which methods communicate ideas most effectively. In every discipline, progress emerges through cycles of action, followed by thoughtful evaluation. Visualization can also support this process in unexpected ways. Many high-performing individuals mentally rehearse their actions before executing them in real situations. Athletes imagine the exact movements required for successful performance. Entrepreneurs visualize conversations with clients or presentations to potential partners. This mental preparation activates neural pathways that support confidence and clarity during the actual event. When the moment arrives, the mind recognizes the situation as familiar rather than overwhelming. The combination of guidance and practice gradually builds competence. Competence is more than technical ability. It includes judgment, timing, and awareness developed through experience. Someone who has practiced deliberately over long periods begins recognizing patterns others overlook. They sense when to act and when to wait. They identify potential obstacles earlier and navigate them with greater ease. As competence grows, confidence follows naturally. This confidence differs from arrogance because it arises from real experience rather than assumption. The individual knows they have invested time and effort in developing their abilities. They trust their capacity to handle challenges because they have faced similar ones before. This quiet assurance becomes visible in how they communicate and make decisions. Others often interpret this visible confidence as talent or luck. Observers see someone performing effectively under pressure and assume they possess a rare gift. What remains invisible is the countless hours of preparation that shaped those abilities. The practice sessions, the questions asked, the mistakes analyzed, these moments form the foundation upon which competence stands. There is another subtle benefit to reaching up toward experts and practicing with intention. It expands perspective. Exposure to experienced thinkers introduces new ways of viewing problems. Strategies that once seemed impossible begin appearing achievable when explained through the lens of someone who has already succeeded. These insights stretch imagination, encouraging learners to attempt challenges that previously felt beyond reach. Technology has made access to expertise easier than at any other time in history. Books, lectures, courses, interviews, and digital communities provide windows into the minds of accomplished individuals across countless fields. A determined learner can absorb ideas from mentors they may never meet in person. The responsibility lies in using these resources wisely, studying them carefully, applying their principles, and adapting them to personal circumstances. Over time, those who commit to reaching up and practicing deliberately begin noticing a transformation in their abilities. Tasks that once felt intimidating become manageable. Conversations with experienced professionals feel less intimidating because shared understanding has grown. The individual begins contributing ideas of their own, gradually shifting from learner to collaborator. Eventually, a moment arrives when someone new approaches them with questions, seeking guidance drawn from the experience they have accumulated. In that moment, the cycle continues. Knowledge flows forward, shaping another person's journey just as previous mentors shaped theirs. Competence rarely appears suddenly. It grows quietly through curiosity, to discipline, and the willingness to learn from those who have walked the path before. Long before a building rises from the ground, someone first sees it in their mind. The architect studies the empty land. Yet instead of bare soil, they begin imagining structure walls, windows, light moving through rooms that do not yet exist. What eventually becomes visible in steel and concrete begins as a silent image within thought. This pattern appears in almost every human achievement. Invention, art, business, exploration. Each one starts as an idea vivid enough to hold attention before it becomes reality. The human mind possesses an unusual ability to rehearse experiences before they occur. Athletes often picture themselves performing the exact movements required to win a race. Musicians imagine the sound of a performance before touching their instruments. Entrepreneurs visualize how conversations with partners or clients might unfold. These mental rehearsals are not fantasies disconnected from action. They function as preparation. By imagining the process repeatedly, the brain begins constructing pathways that guide behavior once the real moment arrives. Visualization works because the mind responds strongly to images that carry emotional clarity. When a person vividly pictures a future achievement, the brain processes that scenario as if it were partially real. Neural circuits associated with planning, motivation, and decision-making become active. The imagined scene creates familiarity. When circumstances later resemble that mental picture, the individual feels less hesitation because their mind has already rehearsed the experience. Many people underestimate how often their imagination shapes their expectations about the future. Without noticing it, individuals frequently visualize negative outcomes, conversations that go poorly, projects that fail, opportunities that slip away. These images influence behavior just as powerfully as positive ones. If someone repeatedly imagines failure, their body may approach new situations with tension and caution. In contrast, visualizing successful outcomes builds a sense of readiness and curiosity. Dreaming up a future does not mean escaping into unrealistic daydreams. It means intentionally directing imagination toward possibilities that align with personal goals. This process requires clarity. Vague images rarely produce meaningful change because the mind struggles to engage with something undefined. A powerful visualization contains detail. It includes the environment, the actions involved, the emotions associated with achieving the desired outcome. Picture someone preparing for an important opportunity, perhaps presenting an idea, launching a project, or entering a competitive field. Rather than focusing only on the pressure of the situation, they imagine themselves moving through it with composure. They see themselves speaking clearly, responding thoughtfully to questions, and navigating challenges with confidence. These mental scenes train attention to recognize the behaviors required for success. Vision boards offer another method for reinforcing this imaginative focus. A vision board is a physical representation of the future someone intends to create. It may include photographs, written goals, inspiring quotations, or symbols that capture the essence of what they hope to achieve. Placed in a visible location, it serves as a daily reminder of direction. Each glance reinforces the connection between present effort and future aspiration. The effectiveness of a vision board lies not in the images themselves, but in the repetition of attention they generate. Every time someone observes those symbols, the brain revisits the associated goal. Over weeks and months, this repetition strengthens motivation. It also encourages the mind to search for actions that move reality closer to the imagined outcome. Opportunities related to the vision begin standing out more clearly because the mind has been trained to recognize them. Visualization becomes even more powerful when combined with practical planning. After imagining an ideal future, a person can begin identifying the steps required to approach it. The gap between dream and reality becomes a series of manageable actions rather than an overwhelming distance. Each step contributes momentum, gradually transforming the imagined scenario into something tangible. Creative thinking plays an important role during this stage. When individuals allow themselves to explore possibilities without immediately judging feasibility, the mind generates innovative solutions. Ideas that initially seem unrealistic can evolve into practical strategies once examined more carefully. The key lies in separating imagination from criticism during the early stages of thinking. Creativity flourishes when the mind has space to explore freely before evaluating constraints. This process reflects a balance between aspiration and realism. Dreaming without action produces little change. Action without vision often leads to effort scattered in too many directions. When imagination and planning operate together, they form a partnership. The vision provides direction, while action gradually builds the path leading toward it. Another interesting aspect of visualization is its ability to influence emotional state. Imagining meaningful success creates feelings of excitement and possibility. These emotions strengthen motivation, making effort feel purposeful rather than exhausting. People who frequently revisit their goals in this way often find it easier to remain committed during difficult periods because they maintain a clear picture of why the work matters. Over time, the images held in the mind begin shaping everyday decisions. A person who envisions themselves becoming skilled in a particular field may choose to study longer, practice more deliberately, or seek out mentors who can guide them. The imagined future quietly guides present behavior. Each action, however small, contributes to aligning reality with the vision. Observers sometimes describe individuals who use these techniques as unusually fortunate. They seem to encounter opportunities that match their ambitions. Yet a closer look often reveals that their attention has simply been trained to notice relevant openings, because their goals remain vivid in their mind. They recognize possibilities others might overlook. Dreaming up the future does not guarantee that every detail will unfold exactly as imagined. Life always introduces variables beyond anyone's control. Nevertheless, visualization offers something valuable, a sense of direction that transforms uncertainty into exploration. Instead of drifting through circumstances, the individual moves with intention. When imagination, attention, and action begin working together, the distance between vision and reality slowly narrows. What once existed only as an internal image starts finding expression in the world through consistent effort and awareness. A future first seen clearly has a way of influencing the steps taken today. At certain moments in life, events unfold with a peculiar sense of timing that makes people pause and wonder. You think about someone you have not spoken to in years, and later that same day their name suddenly appears in your messages. You begin exploring a new idea, and within days you encounter a book, a conversation, or an opportunity that seems almost designed to guide you forward. These experiences often leave a quiet impression that something deeper may be at work beneath the surface of ordinary coincidence. Many people describe such moments as signs, synchronicities, or meaningful coincidences. The term synchronicity was famously explored by psychologist Carl Jung, who used it to describe events that appear connected not through direct cause but through shared meaning. Two seemingly unrelated occurrences align in a way that feels personally significant, creating the sense that inner thoughts and outer circumstances have briefly intersected. From a purely rational perspective, the world contains countless events unfolding simultaneously, making coincidence inevitable. Yet this explanation alone rarely satisfies the emotional impact of certain experiences. Some encounters arrive at exactly the moment a person is searching for clarity. Others reveal information that answers a question someone has been silently carrying for weeks or months. The timing feels so precise that people instinctively interpret it as guidance. When we explore these moments carefully, something interesting becomes visible. Human attention acts like a filter through which reality is interpreted. The brain constantly receives enormous amounts of information from the surrounding environment, far more than conscious awareness can process. To manage this flood of input, the mind selectively highlights what appears relevant to the individual's current concerns and goals. This filtering process means that when your thoughts become focused on a particular subject, your awareness begins noticing related signals more easily. Someone thinking about starting a business suddenly pays attention to conversations about entrepreneurship. A person interested in personal growth becomes drawn toward books, two lectures, or mentors discussing similar ideas. What previously passed unnoticed now appears everywhere. In this sense, synchronicity may arise partly from the alignment between attention and opportunity. When your inner focus sharpens around a particular direction, the outer world begins reflecting that focus through the situations you recognize. It is not that the events were absent before, rather, your mind has become prepared to notice them. Still, there are experiences that feel difficult to explain through attention alone. Occasionally a meeting, discovery, or moment of insight occurs with such precision that it leaves a lingering impression of mystery. Throughout history, people have interpreted these events through spiritual language, suggesting that life itself responds to intention and inner awareness. Many spiritual traditions speak of alignment between inner state and external reality. According to these perspectives, thoughts and emotions act as signals that interact with the broader fabric of existence. When someone cultivates clarity about what they desire and maintains faith in that direction, circumstances gradually begin organizing themselves in supportive ways. The world appears to cooperate with the internal vision. Neville Goddard often described this principle through the concept that imagination shapes reality. In his view, the images a person consistently entertains within their mind eventually influence the external experiences they encounter. When someone fully assumes the feeling of their desired outcome, life begins rearranging itself to mirror that assumption. From this perspective, synchronicity becomes evidence of the bridge forming between inner conviction and outer manifestation. Whether one interprets these experiences through psychology, spirituality, or a blend of both, they often produce the same practical effect. They encourage awareness. People who remain attentive to subtle signals tend to move through life with greater curiosity. Instead of dismissing unusual coincidences immediately, they pause and ask what the moment might reveal. This does not mean accepting every event as a cosmic message. Discernment remains essential. Some coincidences are simply coincidences. The value lies not in searching for supernatural explanations everywhere, but in remaining open to the possibility that life sometimes presents unexpected guidance. Looking up, in this sense, represents a shift in perception. Many individuals spend so much time focused on immediate problems that they overlook the broader patterns unfolding around them. When attention lifts slightly above daily routine, the environment begins revealing connections that once seemed invisible. Conversation, books, encounters, and ideas start weaving together in ways that support growth. Consider how often meaningful opportunities arise through ordinary interactions. A brief conversation introduces someone who later becomes an important collaborator. A book discovered by chance contains exactly the insight needed to solve a persistent challenge. A delayed appointment leads to meeting someone whose perspective alters the direction of an entire project. These moments rarely appear dramatic at first. Their significance becomes clear only in retrospect. The key lies in remaining receptive. When individuals move through life with curiosity rather than rigid expectation, they allow unexpected possibilities to enter their awareness. Curiosity transforms everyday experience into a field of potential discovery. Even minor encounters carry the possibility of insight when observed with attentiveness. Another dimension of synchronicity emerges through intuition. Occasionally, a person feels a subtle pull toward a decision without fully understanding why. This inner sense may encourage them to explore a new path, attend an event, or contact someone unexpectedly. Later, they realize that following that intuition led them toward an important opportunity or connection. Intuition often arises from the mind, integrating information beneath conscious awareness. The brain continuously processes patterns, experiences, and subtle signals that may not immediately reach the surface of thought. When these patterns align, they sometimes produce a feeling of direction, a quiet sense that a particular action might be worthwhile. Acting on this feeling occasionally leads to outcomes that appear remarkably well-timed. Looking up, therefore, becomes both a literal and symbolic act. It invites you to lift attention beyond immediate concerns and notice the wider landscape of experience. When inner vision, tunation, and openness begin aligning, life reveals patterns that were always present yet rarely observed. Some of these moments may appear simple at first glance, yet they carry a subtle resonance that stays with you long after the moment passes. At first glance, the idea of giving something away in order to receive more in return can sound almost paradoxical. Much of modern thinking teaches people to accumulate, to protect resources carefully, to measure every exchange according to personal gain. The world often appears structured around competition, where individuals must secure their own advantage before someone else claims it. Yet beneath this surface logic lies another pattern that quietly shapes human relationships, the principle of generosity. Throughout history, communities have survived and flourished, not only because individuals pursued their own interests, but because they learned to support one another. Long before complex economic systems existed, cooperation and mutual assistance formed the foundation of survival. People shared food, skills, protection, and knowledge because collective well-being strengthened the entire group. In this deeper sense, generosity is not merely a moral virtue. It is a natural expression of human interdependence. When someone gives freely, whether through time, knowledge, encouragement, or material help, they create a subtle shift in the social environment around them. Generosity dissolves barriers that normally separate individuals. Suspicion softens, conversations open more easily. Trust begins forming where distance once existed. These changes often unfold quietly, without immediate recognition. Yet they influence the quality of relationships in lasting ways. Compassion deepens this process even further. Compassion involves recognizing the struggles, fears, and hopes that exist within other people. Instead of seeing others purely as competitors or strangers, a compassionate perspective acknowledges the shared humanity, connecting everyone. Each person carries their own challenges, ambition, and uncertainties. When someone responds to these realities with understanding rather than indifference, they become a stabilizing presence in the lives of those around them. This attitude often produces unexpected outcomes. A simple gesture of kindness, a supportive word during difficulty, assistance offered without expectation, or genuine attention given during conversation can leave a powerful impression. People rarely forget moments when they felt seen and valued during a vulnerable time. These memories shape the way they perceive the person who offered that kindness. In many situations, generosity does not produce immediate visible rewards. Someone may help another person who has no ability to return the favor. They may share advice with someone entering the same field or offer encouragement to someone facing discouragement. At the moment, the act may appear one-sided. Yet the influence of generosity tends to travel farther than expected. Over time, individuals who consistently practice generosity develop reputations that quietly follow them through different environments. Others begin recognizing them as someone trustworthy, supportive, and reliable. This reputation becomes part of their identity within social networks. When opportunities arise, collaborations, Partnerships. Recommendations. People naturally think of those whose character has demonstrated integrity and kindness. There is also a psychological transformation that occurs within the person who gives. Generosity expands perspective. When attention shifts away from constant self-protection and toward the well-being of others, anxiety about personal scarcity often decreases. The mind becomes less preoccupied with what might be lost and more aware of what can be shared. This shift creates a sense of internal abundance, a quiet confidence that life contains more possibilities than fear would suggest. Many spiritual traditions emphasize this idea in different forms. Teachings from various cultures describe generosity as a principle that multiplies rather than diminishes what someone possesses. The act of giving becomes a demonstration of faith that kindness strengthens connection, faith that goodwill creates harmony within human relationships, faith that generosity participates in a larger flow of exchange within life itself. Neville Goddard frequently spoke about the relationship between inner states and outer experiences. According to his philosophy, the feeling a person consistently occupies eventually shapes the circumstances they encounter. When generosity becomes a natural expression of someone's character, it reflects an internal belief in abundance. This belief subtly influences behavior, decisions, and relationships, gradually attracting situations that reflect the same spirit. Importantly, selfless giving does not require dramatic sacrifice. Generosity often appears in small, consistent actions woven into daily life. Offering sincere appreciation for someone's work, listening carefully when another person speaks, sharing knowledge that might help someone improve their craft, encouraging someone who doubts their own abilities. These gestures may seem ordinary, yet their cumulative impact can reshape environments. Modern psychology also supports the benefits of generosity. Studies frequently show that acts of kindness improve emotional well-being not only for the recipient, but also for the person giving. Helping others activates areas of the brain associated with satisfaction and meaning. Individuals who regularly engage in compassionate behavior often report stronger feelings of connection and purpose. This effect arises because generosity aligns with fundamental human values. When people act in ways that support others, they experience themselves as participants in something larger than personal ambition. Their actions contribute to a shared environment where cooperation replaces isolation. In such an environment, trust becomes easier to build, and collaboration becomes more natural. It is important, however, to distinguish genuine generosity from attempts to manipulate outcomes. True giving occurs without calculating immediate personal return. When generosity becomes a strategy designed purely to gain advantage, others often sense the underlying intention. Authentic kindness carries a sincerity that cannot be easily imitated. It arises from empathy rather than expectation. Over time, many individuals discover that the return of generosity rarely arrives in predictable forms. Assistance offered to one person may return through another connection entirely. Encouragement given today may reappear years later as support during a difficult transition. Life often redistributes kindness through pathways impossible to trace directly. Generosity, therefore, becomes less about transactions and more about participation in a broader cycle of goodwill. Each act contributes to an atmosphere where kindness feels natural rather than unusual. In such environments, people feel safer sharing ideas, asking for help, and collaborating towards shared goals. Seen from this perspective, giving up something time, energy, resources does not diminish what a person possesses. Instead, it transforms relationships and strengthens the invisible networks through which opportunity and support often travel. Within those networks, generosity continues, moving quietly from one person to another. There is a moment in almost every meaningful journey when a person realizes that progress rarely happens alone. At first, many people imagine success as a solitary climb, a path where determination and individual effort must carry everything forward. The image is powerful. One person against difficulty, relying solely on discipline and willpower. Yet as experience accumulates, something becomes clear. The most significant achievements rarely belong to a single mind or a single pair of hands. They emerge from the meeting of strengths. Human progress has always been collaborative. Every great invention, every thriving business, every influential movement reflects the convergence of different abilities. One person may carry vision, another organization, another communication, another technical skill. When these capacities intersect in the right way, the result often becomes greater than anything one individual could create alone. This principle appears again and again throughout history. The world advances through partnerships. Collaboration begins with a simple recognition. No one possesses every strength. Each person brings certain abilities naturally, while lacking others entirely. Some people see possibilities before they become visible to anyone else. Others excel at translating ideas into practical systems. Some communicate with clarity that inspires others to act, while others analyze details with precision that prevents costly mistakes. When individuals combine these differences instead of competing against them, something remarkable begins to happen. Gaps close. Weaknesses soften. Potential multiplies. Meaningful partnerships often start with shared purpose. Two people may come from different backgrounds, carry different personalities, and possess different talents, yet they recognize a common direction worth pursuing. That shared direction becomes the bridge connecting their efforts. Instead of asking who receives credit, the focus shifts toward what can be built together. Energy that might have been spent protecting individual territory becomes available for creation. Trust plays a central role in this process. Without trust, collaboration quickly becomes fragile. People begin guarding their ideas, worrying about recognition, or questioning intentions. True partnerships require the willingness to believe in another person's commitment to the shared goal. This belief does not appear instantly. It develops through consistent behavior, through reliability, honesty, and the quiet evidence that someone values the partnership as much as the outcome. Communication strengthens that trust. Partnerships succeed when individuals speak openly about expectations, responsibilities, and challenges. Misunderstandings often arise not from disagreement but from silence. When people hesitate to express concerns or clarify ideas, small problems slowly grow larger. Clear communication acts as a stabilizing force, allowing each participant to understand where the journey is heading and how their contribution fits into the broader effort. Another important element in collaboration is respect for different strengths. In many unsuccessful partnerships, individuals attempt to dominate areas where someone else is more capable. Instead of allowing each person to operate within their natural advantage, they compete for control. The result is frustration and inefficiency. Successful collaborations move in the opposite direction. Each person recognizes where the other excels and allows that strength to guide certain decisions. Respect for competence replaces unnecessary rivalry. This dynamic creates a powerful psychological effect. When people feel their abilities are recognized and valued, their motivation increases. They invest more energy into the shared effort because they see their contribution making a real difference. The partnership becomes not merely a practical arrangement but a source of inspiration. Each participant pushes the other toward higher standards. In many cases, meaningful partnerships also introduce perspectives that challenge existing assumptions. A person working alone may develop blind spots without realizing it. Their thinking follows familiar patterns shaped by personal experience. When another mind enters the conversation, new questions emerge. Alternative interpretations appear. Ideas that once seemed certain may evolve into stronger, more refined concepts through dialogue. This exchange of perspectives often accelerates learning. Instead of discovering every lesson through trial and error individually, partners share insights gathered from their own experiences. Knowledge circulates between them. One person's mistake becomes another person's awareness. One person's discovery becomes a collective advantage. Over time, the partnership develops a form of shared intelligence, a combined understanding greater than either individual originally possessed. Partnerships also offer emotional support during uncertain periods. Every ambitious endeavor encounters obstacles, unexpected complications, delays, moments of doubt. When someone faces these moments alone, discouragement can grow quickly. Within a partnership, however, difficulty becomes a shared challenge rather than a solitary burden. Encouragement travels both directions. One person's confidence can sustain momentum when the other begins to question the path. There is another quiet benefit to collaboration that people often overlook. Partnerships expand networks. Each individual brings connections formed through their own experiences, friends, colleagues, mentors, acquaintances, When two people combine their networks, the range of possibilities increases dramatically. Opportunities that once seemed distant become accessible through mutual introductions and shared relationships. This expansion of connections frequently creates what observers later describe as fortunate timing. A new project receives support from an unexpected direction. A conversation leads to a partnership that opens new doors. What appears to be luck often traces back to relationships formed long before the opportunity emerged. Collaboration becomes the soil in which these opportunities grow. Of course, meaningful partnerships require care. They must be nurtured with honesty, patience, and mutual respect. Differences will inevitably appear. Two individuals rarely think exactly alike, and disagreement sometimes becomes part of the process. When handled constructively, these differences strengthen the partnership rather than weaken it. They encourage deeper examination of ideas and prevent complacency from taking root. Spiritual traditions often speak about unity, the idea that individuals are interconnected in ways deeper than immediate perception suggests. Collaboration reflects this principle in practical form. When people combine their strengths toward a shared purpose, they embody the understanding that progress arises through cooperation rather than isolation. Seen from this perspective, teaming up becomes more than a strategy for success. It becomes a recognition of how human potential unfolds most powerfully. Individual brilliance can begin a journey, but collective effort often carries it farther than one person could travel alone. In the quiet space where different strengths meet, possibilities begin expanding in directions no single mind could have predicted. At some point in every meaningful journey, you reach a quiet threshold where the familiar begins to feel smaller than it once did. The routines that once seemed exciting now feel predictable. The skills that once demanded your full attention start becoming automatic. The environment that once challenged you slowly transforms into something comfortable. Comfort can feel pleasant for a while, but if you stay there too long, something inside begins to whisper that growth has paused. Most people misunderstand this moment. They interpret the restlessness as dissatisfaction or impatience. In reality, it is often a signal of expansion. Human potential does not remain satisfied with repetition forever. When you have mastered the current level of your life, the mind naturally begins searching for the next horizon. Growth rarely announces itself loudly. It usually appears as a subtle sense that you are capable of more than what your current circumstances demand. Leveling up begins with recognizing that learning does not end after formal education. Many people treat school as the final chapter of their development, as if once a diploma is earned, the essential work of learning is complete. Yet the most extraordinary individuals rarely stop studying their craft. They read continuously, experiment constantly, and remain curious about ideas outside their immediate field. Their mindset reflects a simple understanding: the world evolves, and anyone who wishes to grow must evolve with it. Lifelong growth requires curiosity. Curiosity keeps the mind open to possibilities that routine would otherwise hide. When someone asks questions about systems, strategies, perspectives, and new technologies, they begin noticing patterns others ignore. Curiosity transforms ordinary situations into opportunities for discovery. A conversation becomes a lesson. A challenge becomes an experiment. Even failure becomes a form of information rather than a permanent verdict. This approach to life often demands a willingness to take risks. Risk does not always mean reckless leaps into uncertainty. More often it involves stepping beyond the psychological boundaries created by comfort, trying a new skill, pursuing a different career path, speaking an idea aloud that might be rejected, launching a project before every detail feels perfect. These are the kinds of risks that gradually expand personal capacity. Comfort zones have an interesting characteristic. They protect us from immediate discomfort, but they also limit our potential experiences. Within a comfort zone, outcomes are largely predictable because actions follow familiar patterns. Predictability can feel safe, yet it rarely produces transformation. Growth occurs at the edges of familiarity, where uncertainty introduces new variables that challenge existing abilities. When you step beyond those boundaries, the mind initially reacts with hesitation. Doubt appears. Questions arise about whether you are prepared enough or capable enough to succeed. These reactions are natural. The brain is designed to protect stability, and unfamiliar situations often trigger caution. However, caution does not always indicate danger. Sometimes it simply indicates that you are approaching territory where learning will occur. Individuals who level up consistently develop a relationship with uncertainty. Instead of waiting until fear disappears, they move forward while acknowledging its presence. Action becomes a conversation between courage and curiosity. Each step into unfamiliar territory provides new feedback. Some attempts succeed immediately. Others reveal weaknesses that require adjustment. Both outcomes contribute to progress. Risk-taking also strengthens resilience. When someone faces challenges repeatedly, they begin understanding that setbacks rarely represent permanent defeat. A failed attempt often becomes the raw material for improvement. Entrepreneurs refine strategies after unsuccessful ventures. Writers develop stronger voices after early drafts fall short. Inventors redesign prototypes until their ideas finally function. Through this process, failure loses its intimidating power. It becomes a teacher rather than an obstacle. Another important aspect of leveling up involves environment. The people surrounding you influence the limits you imagine for yourself. If everyone within your circle operates at a certain level of ambition, it becomes easy to assume that level represents the natural ceiling of possibility. Exposure to individuals who think bigger, experiment more boldly, or pursue unusual paths can quietly expand your perception of what is achievable. This influence works both consciously and subconsciously. Observing others attempt difficult goals encourages you to question your own assumptions about limitation. Conversations with people who have overcome significant challenges reveal strategies and mindsets that might otherwise remain invisible. Gradually, your internal expectations shift. Goals that once seemed unrealistic begin appearing plausible with enough effort and time. Spiritual traditions often frame growth as a process of continual unfolding. According to many teachings, human potential is not fixed at birth but evolves through experience, awareness, and intention. Each stage of life reveals new lessons designed to expand understanding. When individuals approach life with openness rather than resistance, they allow these lessons to shape their development. Neville Goddard frequently emphasized the creative power of imagination in personal transformation. In his philosophy, the mind does not merely react to circumstances, it participates in shaping them. When someone begins imagining themselves at a higher level of ability, responsibility, or achievement, they start aligning their actions with that internal image. The imagined future influences present decisions. Over time, those decisions reshape reality. Leveling up, therefore, begins internally before it becomes visible externally. The moment you believe growth is possible, your behavior gradually adjusts to match that belief. You search for resources, practice new skills, and engage with opportunities that support the next stage of development. The external results may appear slow at first, yet each step builds momentum. One day you may look back and realize that the version of yourself who once hesitated at the edge of uncertainty has transformed into someone comfortable navigating change. The fears that once seemed overwhelming become manageable challenges. Skills that once felt impossible become part of everyday capability. Growth rarely happens in a single dramatic leap. It unfolds through repeated decisions to stretch beyond familiarity, to remain curious, and to pursue expansion even when the outcome is not guaranteed. Over time, these decisions accumulate, quietly reshaping the boundaries of what you believe you can become. The horizon keeps moving forward as long as the journey continues. Every person carries an invisible atmosphere around them. You may not notice it immediately, yet when you walk into a room, speak with someone, or even simply stand quietly in a group, something subtle begins to move between people. It is not contained in words alone. It lives in tone, expression, posture, and intention. Some individuals bring tension wherever they go, and conversations around them quickly become cautious or guarded. Others seem to bring a quiet brightness with them. When they arrive, the environment feels lighter, easier, almost as if the emotional weight of the moment has shifted. This quality is not reserved for a special category of people. It is a human capacity that can be cultivated through awareness. To light up a room does not require dramatic charisma or constant entertainment. More often it begins with warmth. Warmth is the ability to make others feel that their presence matters, that they are seen, heard, and welcomed without judgment. It can appear in the way someone listens attentively instead of waiting impatiently to speak, or in the way they greet others with genuine interest rather than polite formality. When someone offers warmth consistently, people instinctively feel safer around them. Safety, in this sense, is emotional. It means that others sense they can express themselves honestly without fear of dismissal or ridicule. In an environment shaped by warmth, conversations deepen naturally. Ideas flow more freely. Individuals become more willing to share thoughts that might otherwise remain hidden. Joy also plays an important role in uplifting others. Joy differs from superficial excitement or forced enthusiasm. It reflects a deeper appreciation for the simple experiences of being alive, moments of laughter, curiosity, learning, and connection. Someone who carries joy does not ignore life's difficulties, yet they refuse to let those difficulties define every interaction. Their presence reminds others that even within serious work or challenging circumstances, there is still room for lightness. Encouragement becomes the bridge between warmth and joy. Encouragement is the act of recognizing potential in someone else and reflecting it back to them. Many individuals carry quiet doubts about their abilities. They may work diligently, yet wonder privately whether their efforts truly matter. When another person notices their progress and expresses belief in their potential, that simple recognition can shift their confidence dramatically. A few sincere words often travel farther than the speaker realizes. Telling someone that their work is meaningful, that their effort is visible, or that their idea deserves attention may strengthen their motivation during moments when they feel uncertain. Encouragement does not inflate ego, it nurtures courage. It reminds individuals that growth often requires support from those who believe in them before they fully believe in themselves. People who uplift others through encouragement gradually shape the emotional climate around them. Teams become more collaborative. Friends become more open about their aspirations. Colleagues feel more willing to attempt creative ideas. A single encouraging presence can influence an entire group because positivity tends to multiply through interaction. This influence does not depend on authority or status. In many environments, the individual who inspires others is not necessarily the one holding the highest position. Leadership often emerges through emotional impact rather than formal titles. Someone who consistently supports others, celebrates progress, and responds to challenges with optimism naturally becomes a source of stability for those around them. The effect of such presence extends beyond immediate relationships. People remember how someone made them feel during important moments. Years later, they may still recall the person who offered encouragement when confidence was fragile, or the colleague who maintained calm optimism during stressful periods. These memories shape reputations in powerful ways. Over time, individuals known for uplifting others attract trust and goodwill that open doors to meaningful opportunities. Spiritual traditions across cultures emphasize the importance of light as a symbol of awareness and compassion. Light represents clarity that dissolves confusion and warmth that softens fear. When someone chooses to uplift others, they embody this symbolism in practical form. Their actions demonstrate that kindness and encouragement are not abstract ideals, but living expressions of human connection. Neville Goddard often described imagination as a creative force capable of shaping both inner and outer reality. When individuals imagine others succeeding, growing, and flourishing, they subtly influence their interactions with those people. Encouraging words arise naturally because the mind already holds a positive image of their potential. In this way, uplifting others becomes part of a larger process of creative thinking. The imagination begins seeing possibility everywhere it looks. Another interesting dimension of uplifting presence lies in emotional resilience. Individuals who spread warmth and encouragement often cultivate these qualities within themselves first. They learn to regulate their reactions to stress, choosing responses that maintain clarity rather than escalating tension. This internal balance allows them to support others, even during difficult circumstances. Over time, this behavior creates a cycle of positive influence. People who feel supported and encouraged frequently extend the same attitude toward others. One person's warmth inspires another's kindness, which then spreads further through new interactions. The result resembles a chain reaction of goodwill moving through social networks. Importantly, uplifting others does not require perfection. Everyone experiences moments of fatigue, frustration, or doubt. The difference lies in the overall intention guiding behavior. When someone genuinely wishes to bring light into the lives of those around them, small acts of kindness accumulate into a meaningful presence. A smile offered during a difficult day, patient listening during a conversation that matters deeply to someone else, sincere praise for effort that might otherwise go unnoticed. These gestures may appear simple, yet their impact can be profound. Each one communicates a message: you are valued, your effort matters, and your presence contributes something meaningful. Over time, individuals who consistently offer this kind of presence become sources of energy within their communities. Others seek their company not because they demand attention, but because they create environments where people feel stronger and more hopeful. The quiet brightness of encouragement often lingers long after the moment itself has passed. There are moments in life when you can feel a quiet pull inside you, something difficult to describe yet impossible to ignore. It does not arrive as a loud command or a sudden revelation. Instead, it feels more like a gentle current beneath your thoughts, guiding your attention towards certain paths while leaving others strangely uninteresting. You may notice that certain ideas energize you deeply while others leave you feeling empty, even when they appear successful on the surface. This quiet pull is often what people refer to as an inner calling. Many people spend years trying to understand this feeling because modern life frequently encourages the opposite approach. Society tends to measure success through visible achievements, status, financial reward, recognition, or approval from others. These markers can be useful, yet they do not always reflect what a person truly feels drawn toward. Someone may follow a path that appears impressive from the outside, while quietly sensing that something essential inside them remains unexpressed. Alignment begins when you start paying attention to that inner signal instead of ignoring it. The process does not require abandoning responsibility or making dramatic decisions overnight. Rather, it begins with awareness. You begin noticing the activities that make time disappear because your attention becomes fully absorbed. You notice the subjects you naturally study even when no one asks you to. You notice the kind of work that leaves you feeling expanded rather than drained. These observations reveal patterns. Your inner calling rarely appears as a single dramatic message. Instead, it unfolds gradually through repeated signals: curiosity that refuses to fade, interests that persist across years, or skills that develop naturally when given attention. When these patterns become clear, they begin forming a direction that feels authentic to your deeper nature. Living in harmony with purpose requires courage, because alignment sometimes challenges expectations imposed by the outside world. Family traditions, cultural norms, and economic pressures can all influence the choices people make. These influences are not inherently wrong. They often provide stability and structure. However, when external expectations completely silence inner guidance, individuals may feel as though they are living someone else's story rather than their own. Purpose does not always appear as a grand mission destined to transform the world. For many people, it reveals itself through simpler expressions: creating something meaningful, helping others solve problems, teaching knowledge that improves lives, or exploring ideas that deepen understanding. Purpose often resides in the intersection between what you care about and what you are capable of developing into skill. The challenge lies in listening carefully enough to recognize that intersection. The world is filled with noise opinions, trends, advice, comparison. When these voices dominate attention, it becomes difficult to hear the quieter signals coming from within. Alignment, therefore, requires moments of stillness. In silence, you begin distinguishing between desires that arise from external pressure and those that emerge from genuine interest. Spiritual traditions frequently describe this inner guidance as the voice of the soul. While the language may differ across cultures, the idea remains similar. Each person carries a deeper intelligence that senses which directions support growth and which lead toward stagnation. When individuals learn to trust that guidance, their actions begin reflecting a sense of coherence between thought, emotion, and behavior. Neville Goddard spoke often about living from the state of the wish fulfilled. In his teaching, imagination acts as the bridge between inner vision and outer experience. When you consistently imagine yourself already living the life that feels authentic to you, your subconscious mind begins adjusting behavior to align with that image. Opportunities that resonate with that vision become easier to recognize, while paths that conflict with it gradually lose their appeal. Alignment, therefore, involves more than choosing a goal. It involves embodying a state of being. Instead of waiting for circumstances to change before feeling purposeful, you begin living as someone already connected to that purpose. Your daily actions, decisions, and attitudes gradually reflect that identity. Over time, the outer world reorganizes itself around the inner conviction you have adopted. One of the most noticeable effects of alignment is clarity. When your actions match your deeper values, decisions become simpler. You no longer spend excessive energy debating every opportunity that appears. Instead, you ask a more focused question. Does this move me closer to the life that feels true to who I am becoming? If the answer is yes, the path becomes easier to pursue. If the answer is no, letting go becomes easier as well. Living in harmony with purpose also strengthens resilience. Difficulties do not disappear simply because someone follows their calling. Challenges remain part of every meaningful pursuit. The difference lies in how those challenges are experienced. When people work towards something that resonates with their deeper identity, obstacles often feel like part of the journey rather than reasons to abandon it. Another interesting transformation occurs in relationships. Alignment tends to attract people who resonate with similar values and intentions. As you become clearer about your direction, your environment begins reflecting that clarity. Conversations change. Collaborations become more meaningful. Encounters with individuals who share compatible visions become more frequent. This shift can sometimes feel mysterious, as though life itself begins responding differently once alignment is established. Yet much of this change arises through attention and behavior. When your focus becomes consistent, you recognize opportunities that match your purpose more easily. When your actions express authenticity, others sense that sincerity and respond with greater trust. The process of alignment is not a single decision completed once and forever. It unfolds continuously throughout life. As experiences accumulate and understanding deepens, your sense of purpose may evolve. New interests emerge. Old assumptions transform. Alignment, therefore, becomes an ongoing conversation between inner awareness and external action. Through that conversation, life gradually shapes itself around what feels most real within you. There is a kind of influence in this world that does not announce itself with power, authority, or dramatic gestures. It does not demand attention, and yet its effect often reaches further than the loudest voices in the room. You have probably felt it before without realizing it. A simple act of kindness from someone when you least expected it. A calm presence during a difficult moment. A few words spoken gently that somehow shift the direction of an entire day. These moments rarely appear extraordinary on the surface, yet they carry a quiet force capable of changing the atmosphere around them. Most people imagine leadership as something tied to status or position. Titles, authority, and recognition often define who is seen as influential. Yet some of the most meaningful guidance in human life emerges from people who hold none of these roles. Their influence flows through everyday kindness, through the way they choose to see the world, and through the subtle presence of love in the way they treat others. Kindness in its simplest form is the decision to respond to life with care instead of indifference. It appears in small gestures that rarely receive attention, holding patience during a frustrating situation instead of reacting with anger, offering help when someone is overwhelmed, even though it costs time or effort, speaking respectfully even when disagreement exists. Each of these actions may seem minor, but their effect accumulates in ways that are often invisible. Human beings are deeply sensitive to the emotional tone of their environment. When someone brings kindness into a situation filled with tension, the atmosphere begins to shift. Defensive attitudes soften. Conversations slow down enough for understanding to appear. In this way, kindness becomes more than politeness. It becomes a stabilizing force that guides interactions toward cooperation rather than conflict. A positive perspective strengthens this influence. Positive thinking does not mean ignoring reality or pretending that difficulties do not exist. Rather, it involves choosing to look at circumstances through the lens of possibility rather than despair. Two individuals may face the same challenge and interpret it completely differently. One sees only the problem and becomes discouraged. The other recognizes the difficulty yet remains curious about what might still be learned or improved. This difference in perspective shapes behavior in powerful ways. When someone approaches life with a constructive outlook, they tend to respond to setbacks with patience rather than panic. They look for solutions instead of assigning blame. Their calm approach often helps others regain clarity as well. People begin feeling that progress remains possible even when circumstances appear uncertain. Over time, individuals who maintain this attitude become quiet anchors within their communities. Others instinctively turn to them during moments of confusion or stress, not because they claim to have all the answers, but because their presence brings a sense of steadiness. In difficult conversations, they remain respectful. In uncertain situations, they remain hopeful. In environments filled with criticism, they continue offering encouragement. Love lies at the center of this influence, though the word is often misunderstood. In this context, love does not refer only to romantic emotion. It reflects a broader commitment to valuing the dignity and potential of every person encountered. Love appears in the willingness to see others not as obstacles or competitors, but as fellow travelers navigating their own journeys. When someone interacts with others from this place of care, their actions begin reflecting a deeper awareness of connection. They listen more attentively. They judge less quickly. They recognize that behind every behavior lies a human story shaped by experiences that may not be immediately visible. This understanding naturally produces compassion. Compassion, in turn, changes the quality of relationships. Instead of reacting impulsively to mistakes or disagreements, compassionate individuals pause long enough to understand what someone else might be facing internally. This pause often prevents unnecessary conflict. It allows conversations to move from accusation toward resolution. From a spiritual perspective, many traditions describe love as one of the most transformative forces available to human beings. Teachings across cultures suggest that when individuals act with genuine care toward others, they participate in something larger than personal ambition. Their actions become expressions of a deeper unity connecting all people. Neville Goddard often emphasized that the state of consciousness a person occupies eventually shapes the experiences they encounter. When someone consistently lives from a state of kindness and goodwill, their interactions with the world naturally reflect those qualities. Relationships become more cooperative. Opportunities arise through networks of trust. The external environment begins mirroring the internal attitude carried within. This does not happen because kindness manipulates outcomes. It happens because people respond differently when they feel respected and valued. A workplace led by kindness tends to produce stronger collaboration. Friendships built on mutual care develop resilience during difficult periods. Communities shaped by compassion become environments where individuals support each other's growth. The quiet influence of love rarely seeks recognition. In fact, many of the most impactful individuals never realize how deeply they have affected others. A teacher who encourages a struggling student may unknowingly inspire a future career. A friend who listens during a difficult season may restore someone's confidence to keep moving forward. A stranger's unexpected kindness may shift a person's belief about how the world works. These influences ripple outward far beyond the original moment. Someone who experiences kindness often becomes more likely to extend kindness to another person later. In this way, compassion moves through human networks like a gentle current, touching lives in ways that are impossible to fully trace. Living with this awareness gradually changes the way everyday interactions are approached. Ordinary moments become opportunities to contribute something positive to the environment around you. A conversation becomes a chance to uplift rather than criticize. A challenge becomes an invitation to respond with patience rather than frustration. None of these choices require extraordinary talent. They require attention and intention. When kindness, perspective, and love guide daily behavior, influence begins spreading quietly through the spaces where people live and work. Often, the most powerful guidance in life arrives not through force, but through the steady example of how someone chooses to treat others. There comes a point in life when experience begins whispering a subtle question that many people spend years avoiding. What if the patterns you keep encountering are not entirely accidental? At first, this idea can feel uncomfortable, because it suggests that the circumstances appearing around you might reflect something happening within you. Yet when you begin observing your life carefully, you may notice that certain situations repeat themselves with surprising consistency. The same kinds of misunderstandings appear in relationships. Similar obstacles surface in work. Familiar frustrations return in different environments. When patterns repeat across different chapters of life, they invite a deeper kind of attention. Self-awareness begins with the willingness to observe these patterns without immediate judgment. Most people react to difficulties by focusing entirely on the external event. Someone offended them. An opportunity disappeared. A plan failed. A conversation went wrong. These events are real. But the deeper insight appears when you step back and ask a different question. How did my own thinking, expectations, or reactions contribute to this experience? This question does not assign blame. Instead, it opens the door to understanding. The mind operates through habits of perception developed over years of experience. These habits influence how you interpret events, how you respond emotionally, and how you make decisions in uncertain moments. If certain habits remain unconscious, they quietly guide behavior again and again, often producing the same outcomes. Pattern recognition allows you to see these invisible influences. Perhaps you notice that you often hesitate to pursue opportunities until they disappear. Perhaps you recognize that you expect criticism before it even occurs. And this expectation shapes the way you speak or act. Perhaps you observe that certain fears cause you to withdraw from situations where growth might have been possible. These realizations can feel surprising at first. Yet they carry enormous power because awareness creates the possibility of change. Many people believe wisdom arrives only through age or education. But in reality, wisdom grows through reflection. Reflection transforms experience into understanding. Without reflection, events simply accumulate as memories. With reflection, those same events reveal lessons about how the mind works and how behavior influences outcomes. Self-awareness, therefore, becomes a form of internal observation. You begin noticing the thoughts that appear automatically when challenges arise. You observe emotional reactions without immediately identifying with them. You pay attention to the beliefs shaping your expectations about success, relationships, or opportunity. Over time, this observation reveals patterns that were previously invisible. One of the most valuable abilities developed through self-awareness is the capacity for inner correction. Inner correction means adjusting your internal responses before external circumstances force a reaction. Instead of repeating familiar habits automatically, you pause long enough to choose a different response. This pause may seem small, yet it often determines the direction of an entire situation. Consider how quickly emotional reactions can escalate when left unexamined. A misunderstanding leads to frustration. Frustration turns into anger, and anger shapes words that deepen conflict. Yet when someone practices self-awareness, they begin recognizing the early signals of that emotional chain reaction. They notice tension forming before it erupts. In that moment of awareness, a different choice becomes possible. The individual may respond with patience instead of irritation, curiosity instead of defensiveness, or calm explanation instead of confrontation. Over time, these small adjustments produce significant changes in experience. Situations that once repeated themselves begin evolving in new directions. Conversations unfold more smoothly. Decisions become clearer. Relationships grow stronger because reactions no longer follow the same automatic patterns. Spiritual traditions have long emphasized the importance of inner observation. Many teachings describe the mind as both a creator and a mirror. Thoughts and beliefs do not simply exist inside the head. They influence how the world is perceived and experienced. When someone changes their inner state through awareness, reflection, or intention, the external environment often begins responding differently. Neville Goddard spoke frequently about this relationship between inner imagination and outer reality. In his view, the circumstances of life reflect the states of consciousness people habitually occupy. When someone changes the assumptions they hold about themselves and their possibilities, their behavior naturally begins aligning with that new assumption. The external world gradually mirrors the internal transformation. From this perspective, wisdom is not merely the accumulation of information. Wisdom is the ability to notice when your internal state no longer supports the life you wish to experience. It is the courage to revise your thinking, adjust your expectations, and adopt new perspectives that lead toward growth. This process requires honesty. Self-awareness becomes powerful only when individuals are willing to examine themselves without defensiveness. It asks you to look at your habits, your fears, your assumptions, and your reactions with clarity rather than denial. While this examination can feel challenging, it also provides freedom. The moment you see a pattern clearly, you are no longer completely controlled by it. Another dimension of wisdom emerges through humility. Recognizing that you are capable of learning from your own mistakes allows growth to continue throughout life. Instead of viewing errors as evidence of failure, you begin treating them as signals pointing toward areas that need adjustment. Each experience becomes a form of feedback guiding your development. Over time, self-awareness transforms how you interpret events around you. Instead of reacting impulsively to every difficulty, You begin seeing life as a conversation between inner state and external experience. Each challenge invites reflection. Each success reveals something about the mindset that created it. This approach gradually shifts the sense of control people feel over their lives. Circumstances no longer appear entirely random or overwhelming. Instead, they become opportunities for deeper understanding about how thought, belief, and behavior interact with the world. Through this awareness, wisdom grows quietly, shaping the choices that follow. There is a moment in many people's lives when they finally begin to understand that luck is not simply about the opportunities that arrive, but about the condition of the heart that receives them. You can stand in the middle of countless possibilities and still feel trapped if something inside you remains wounded, bitter, or heavy with the past. In the same way, someone whose inner world has been renewed can walk through uncertainty and still experience life as full of promise. What appears to be luck from the outside often begins as healing on the inside. Healing does not mean that painful experiences never happened. Every human life contains moments of disappointment, betrayal, mistakes, and loss. These experiences leave impressions within memory, and sometimes those impressions shape the way people see the world long after the event itself has passed. A person who was once rejected may begin expecting rejection everywhere. Someone who experienced failure may quietly believe that success belongs only to others. Without realizing it, these hidden beliefs influence decisions and limit the possibilities a person allows themselves to explore. Forgiveness becomes the first doorway to renewal. Forgiveness is often misunderstood as pretending that harm never occurred or excusing behavior that caused pain. In reality, forgiveness is something much deeper and far more personal. It is the decision to release the emotional weight that binds your future to a moment in the past. When someone chooses forgiveness, they are not approving what happened. They are refusing to let that experience define the rest of their life. This release creates space within the mind and heart. Energy that was once trapped in resentment or regret begins flowing toward new possibilities. Many people discover that the moment they truly forgive, whether another person or themselves, something shifts internally. The world feels lighter. Opportunities that once seemed distant suddenly appear closer, not because the outside world changed instantly, but because the internal resistance blocking perception has begun dissolving. Self-forgiveness is especially powerful. Human beings often carry silent judgments against themselves for years. A mistake made long ago may continue whispering doubt in moments when courage is needed most. Yet mistakes are part of the process through which understanding grows. When you forgive yourself sincerely, you reclaim the freedom to grow beyond the version of yourself who made that error. Renewal follows forgiveness naturally. Once emotional burdens begin releasing their hold, the mind becomes more receptive to fresh ideas and new directions. Renewal does not require erasing the past. It transforms the past into wisdom. Experiences that once felt like setbacks reveal lessons about resilience, patience, and empathy. Instead of seeing your history as something broken, you begin recognizing it as a foundation that prepared you for deeper awareness. This shift in perception often brings a surprising realization. Abundance is not something reserved for a fortunate few. Abundance begins as a way of seeing the world. When someone carries gratitude and openness within their perspective, they notice opportunities others overlook. A conversation becomes the beginning of collaboration. A challenge becomes the starting point of innovation. A moment of curiosity becomes the seed of discovery. Gratitude strengthens this sense of abundance. When you actively recognize the good already present in your life, your attention naturally expands toward possibilities rather than limitations. Gratitude does not deny difficulties. It simply refuses to allow them to eclipse everything else. By appreciating what exists today, you cultivate a mindset that welcomes more experiences worth appreciating tomorrow. Spiritual teachings across cultures describe abundance as something that flows through generosity, awareness, and faith in the unfolding of life. Neville Goddard often emphasized the power of assumption, the idea that the inner state you occupy becomes the blueprint for your outer experience. When someone assumes the feeling of abundance, even before it appears visibly, their behavior begins reflecting that belief. They approach opportunities with confidence instead of fear. They share kindness without worrying about scarcity. They imagine futures that expand beyond current limitations. Over time, these attitudes shape circumstances, Relationships deepen because people respond warmly to generosity and sincerity. Creative ideas emerge because the mind feels safe, exploring possibility instead of guarding against failure. Opportunities appear more frequently because attention is directed toward growth rather than avoidance. Healing also transforms the way you relate to others. When inner wounds are acknowledged and released, compassion grows naturally. You begin recognizing that many of the people you encounter are also carrying unseen struggles. Instead of reacting with judgment or impatience, you respond with understanding. This compassion strengthens connections and builds relationships rooted in trust and respect. A life guided by forgiveness, renewal, and gratitude gradually develops a different rhythm. The person living this way does not escape difficulty, but they navigate it with a sense of resilience that others often describe as remarkable fortune. When challenges arise, they respond with creativity instead of despair. When opportunities appear, they approach them with courage instead of hesitation. Observers may call this luck, yet the deeper reality lies in the mindset that allows possibility to flourish. Becoming the luckiest human alive is not about controlling every event that unfolds around you. Life will always contain elements beyond prediction. Instead, it means cultivating an inner state that allows you to receive life fully. Forgiveness clears the past. Renewal refreshes the present, and gratitude opens the future. When these qualities guide your journey, something subtle begins unfolding through the years ahead. Your relationships grow richer, your experiences become more meaningful, and the path forward reveals possibilities you once believed belonged only to chance. And gradually, without forcing it, life begins, responding to the quiet transformation taking place within you.